Good morning, welcome to Backchat. I'm Hugh Chiverton. Your co-host today is Danny Gittings. Danny, good morning to you.
Good morning.
We're talking today about how to handle new media. Hong Kong Free Press, who describes itself as an online newspaper, is launching a judicial review against the government over its policy of barring online media outlets from its press conferences and from its press releases. But should old and new media be treated in the same way, or are there important differences? Do you think it matters if we get our news away from the conventional mainstream media, and is there a viable business model at the moment for online news? Call us with your thoughts, your take, your comments. Welcome. 233 88266 is our number. You can email backchat@rthk.hk, or you can go to our Facebook page, which is Backchat on RTHK Radio 3 after 9:20. We're talking about the issue of new mothers facing problems at work. And joining us for our first discussion, we have with us Tom Grundy, who's the editor-in-chief of the Hong Kong Free Press. In our central studio, Francis Moriarty, a veteran journalist and a member of the FCC Press Freedom Committee, a co-founder of the Human Rights Press Awards. Jerome Chiu from Civic Passion, who's also a writer at the popular Passion Times. And we hope to be joined soon also by CK Lau, who's Associate Dean and Principal Lecturer of the Department of Journalism at the Baptist University and a former journalist himself. Tom Grundy, maybe we'll start with you. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Explain what the problem is and what you're going to have a judicial review. What will the substance of that be?
Well, it's based on the Bill of Rights idea that we have freedom of expression, and one of the issues is that we can't, as we're online apparently, access government press conferences, government press releases, and we feel that's a rather archaic attitude of the government. We're a registered company, we have an office, we cover government goings-on every day, we're all Hong Kong Journalists Association members, and we're all professional qualified journalists. So there's no difference really, other than that we're not printing on dead trees. So we certainly have recognition, as my friend said this morning, from the Chinese authorities who've blocked us, our website. We want the local government to give us the right to ask public officials questions and be able to report on things properly.
That's an interesting concept. You're suggesting somehow that if you're blocked by the Chinese, the central government, then that amounts to some sort of recognition that you're a journalist and you should then be allowed into press conferences with the Hong Kong government.
Well, that was my friend's joke over WhatsApp this morning, and clearly, certainly the central authorities deem us to be a news source. They've noticed us.
Yeah, but you have to realise, that sort of logic is a non-starter, isn't it? The problem I have is what you put forward a very credible argument there. This sounds to be more like a political argument than a legal argument. I mean, the government, they can't let everybody into their press conferences. We may well disagree with who they let in, but it's going to be very difficult to argue that you've actually got a fundamental freedom of expression issue here.
I think the government is making a political argument rather than a practical one. I understand this debate about where to draw the line or whatever, but we're nowhere near the grey zone of, are you a blogger or someone with a big Twitter followership? We have a recognised body, the Hong Kong Journalists Association. The press passes that they give out are recognised by the police and by LegCo. All of these things that we present to the legislature, they get us in. It's no problem. And elsewhere in the world, it's also not a problem. I think it's a debate for 10 years ago as to whether online news is news. Certainly that's how people get their news nowadays, and I'm sure it's how you and listeners got their news, over the last 24 hours.
Yes, tell us a bit more about LegCo, because they found they don't seem to have the same objections to online news agencies that the Hong Kong government do. They found a way of admitting online agencies, haven't they?
Yeah, and it's quite stringent, and they expect a letter from the boss. They, with the chops and stamps and letterhead. The Hong Kong Journalists Association press pass. We have our own press passes as well. They look at all of these things together, and you can get a temporary pass as you go in.
What's actually the rule then for the Hong Kong government? Who will they give passes to, or who will they accredit?
People who are basically in print. So I've tried to attend the press briefings with the chief executive on Tuesdays, and we've tried
or electronic media, presumably.
We're at electronic media, yeah, and it does cover other digital media that they have no access. So you need to apply for a print license through the newspaper ordinance.
No. I mean, they give press passes to electronic media, don't they? To radio and TV,
and to news agencies as well.
Well, we've got a list, actually, of who they have given access to. TVB has 3 of them. The Jakarta Post has 1, foreign newspaper. Foreign broadcasters, like the Australian Broadcasting Corporation.
Yeah, I'm saying that print isn't the criterion, because there's electronic media.
Broadcasters and print. Those which are listed as electronic media, such as BBC Online, TVB.com, they're part of, bigger corporations which do have a print license. So I went down this list of over 100, media outlets, and they're at least consistent with that. But even look at Washington D.C. and the White House briefings. There, you've got the Huffington Post, BuzzFeed. The rest of the world have caught up. It's time the Hong Kong, scrap their archaic policies too.
And how much difficulty does it cause for you at Hong Kong Free Press in your work, not having access to government press conferences? You could say the most interesting news is not taking place in government press briefings anyway. So
sometimes it is. If people are grilling, an official, or we want to ask questions, whether it's on Baggate or something a lot more, important, we want to be able to pose those questions for our readers. And there's not many places readers can go, for English news. So we want to be able to, represent the minority in Hong Kong who speak English. And also, it's a business matter. I mean, they say, our press releases and whatever are going to be online later on in the day, but speed is everything, and if you're competing and there are other players, minutes really matter. So it's hindering the business as much as it is our ability to report news and have an informed electorate.
Okay, let's bring in a representative of another.
Can I just a little some traffic news actually just around the corner from here. Problems on the Lung Chang Road because of a vehicle breakdown. The slow lane of the Lung Chang Road towards Kwun Tong near Choi Hung Estate, and the traffic is backed right up to Beacon Heights. That's near here, right up to Broadcast Drive. In other words, the traffic is very congested in that area, so that's big problems on the Lung Chang Road towards Kwun Tong. Sorry, Danny.
Let's bring in another representative of online publication, Jerome Chiu from Civic Passion. Civic Passion, of course, good morning, publishes Passion Times. Now, you don't really care about going to government press conferences, right? You don't care whether the government recognises you or not.
Well, we do care, but of course we are routinely denied access, even if we are also a print media. If you don't know yet, we publish a monthly newspaper and distribute them every month.
But you don't have a licence for that?
We do.
Oh, you do? So what?
We've gone through all the procedures, just as Tom Grundy has gone through all the procedures.
Well, Tom Grundy doesn't have a print version. I mean, we can say it's very unfair.
Yes,
but you're saying you do.
My clarification is that being a print media doesn't stop the authority from denying us access to their press conferences and so on.
Do they give a reason? Do they have to give a reason?
They just say that we're not media at all. Even if we gave them all the evidences of our being a proper media, doing all the right registrations and so on, and so we actually welcome Tom Grundy's action here.
You are. What is the relationship between Civic Passion and Passion Times? Passion Times is a very popular site, I know, in Hong Kong. But
we're the media arm of Civic Passion. We lost our election narrowly in 2012, and we realized then that we must have our own media arm to collect our own facts. I mean, not exactly our own facts, but those facts that are not disseminated by mainstream media.
What I mean? Are you a news organisation, or are you just a publicity and propaganda body for the party?
Well, as far as propaganda is concerned, I'd rather say we are a counter-propaganda body, because the mainstream media is controlled by CCP. If not the CCP, then some publications that support with a lot of hostility towards localists. They support the pan-democrats.
Right,
so in that case,
your advocacy or something like that.
Yes, we disseminate our views.
You disseminate your views.
Yes, along with the publication of news that might not be seen through publications by mainstream media.
Tom Grundy, do you think that Civic Passion should be able to get into government press conferences?
I don't think I should decide, and I certainly don't think the government should. They're the last people who should be saying you in, you out, There needs to be some other mechanism.
Well, I don't think that's...
Hong Kong Journalists Association, where they look at the credentials and the qualifications and perhaps the content or however they want to measure it and decide who's in and who's out.
I don't. You were just trying to mention examples elsewhere in the world. I mean, in the US, it is the administration that decides who's allowed. Now, you're right to say that they do allow online media into the White House, but it's not some third party who's deciding access. We're talking here about access to government facilities, to government press conferences. So it's hard to imagine that anyone else would be deciding on that access than the government themselves.
Danny, let me...
let's bring in Francis Moriarty from the FCC Press Freedom Committee.
Thank you, Danny. Well, I'm just thinking as I hear you say that very, how can I say, confidently. I, for many years, was allowed into the White House to cover events in the White House. I stopped getting access. And it was clear that it was in the Xi Jinping visit. It was clear that the Chinese were running the show in the White House. We're just letting them do it. For the first time in 30 years of being a journalist and being able to go to the White House. I had the press pass. And I had the State Department pass. I had everything that I should have. I spoke with people in the White House, and I could not get in for the first time ever. So sometimes third
parties... Were you there as an individual? Or
No. I was there representing RTHK from where I used to work.
RTHK?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I was denied access for the first time. I didn't walk up to the door and say, I want to come in just to see Xi Jinping. I was sent by this station to go there, and I could not get into the White House for the first time ever. I've been in the White House before with Tung Chee-hwa. I've been in the White House with President Bush. I've been in the White House in the Oval Office with Bill Clinton. I mean, this was exceptional. And it was clear that they handed over to the Chinese basically the right to vet who could get in and who couldn't.
Francis, what that example shows is these problems are not just in Hong Kong. Then
of course, if you phrase the question that way, and let's get to the larger question. Yes, it's a much bigger question as to what constitutes media today and what constituted media 20 years ago. It's an entirely different ball game, and you have to find some way to deal with things. The government in Hong Kong is doing two things simultaneously. On one hand, it's learning everything it can about social media and trying to use it to its own advantage, as I think any government probably would. At the same time, it's seeking to control because it fears that people like Passion Times or somebody else is going to get in, and instead of having people who are collecting news, you're going to have rabble-rousers and people who are not true journalists, whatever they are. And that's becoming harder and harder for everybody to decide. It's becoming harder in the FCC, the Foreign Correspondents Club, to break the categories between a local journalist, overseas journalist, between print and media, and where do you put people, when all of these templates are being merged into one, because that's the power that the internet offers you. You can embed video, you can embed audio, you can have text, you can do all of these things. And this is the way things are going. So how do you control things? Right now, the government is seeking one of its ways of trying to control things is to say, if you're linked to a newspaper, let's say you're the scmp.com, and you're linked to the South China Morning Post, well, we know how to deal with newspapers, we have you. But if you start up in your house or stand or Initium or something else, how do they deal with that? And I think that's a problem that they're trying to face. And it is a free press issue. It's not just a little difficulty that they have, because it really affects the dissemination of news and how news gets to whom and how quickly.
Okay, let's bring in another, I guess, who's been waiting patiently on the line. CK Lau is Associate Dean. CK Lau, are you there? CK Lau's gone. Let's go back to Tom Grundy then, and to follow you. Tom Grundy, you heard just now Francis Moriarty talking about the issue he'd had at the White House, and so maybe we should say the Hong Kong government is not so unusual, and there have been cases in Britain as well. The Hong Kong government's not so unusual in trying to limit access to its own press briefings.
Yeah, I'd agree that there are clearly issues there as well. Then that they pick and choose, but as Jerome was saying, I mean, the government has embraced and has all these social media channels and online. It says that Hong Kong, is a tech hub. CY Leung last month was hailing its press freedom. But this policy is years out of date. And it's at a time when print, I mean, how many are going to lose their licenses? Because many are disappearing, like Hong Kong Daily News. Yesterday, another print newspaper in Britain, someone experimentally tried to bring back a print newspaper. It lasted 2 months, so it's on its last leg. So it has to modernize with times and technology anyway.
You raise a good point there. If print newspapers stop their print versions, then under the Hong Kong government rules, they'd no longer be entitled to access to these press conferences. I'm thinking of the Independent in Britain, for instance, is no longer printed. So under those rules, theoretically, it shouldn't be allowed access.
Danny, you can flip what you're saying around another way. If you can link, as the government is, online news gathering to the existence of a traditional news form, be it broadcasting or a print newspaper, if you can then control the broadcasting services to some degree, you can control the print media to some degree, then you are by extension exerting control also on the new online sources, which are the alternative to the disappearing old media and the continuing old media that have some sort of backing, Alibaba or whoever it may be, that can keep it going. So there's, the government has to play this very carefully. On one hand, it has to seem open, but on the other hand, it's always concerned about how the stories are played and by whom, and it uses its influence, and it always has.
You have an interesting kind of yeah. Go on, Tom Grundy.
I had a bit of a history lesson from Andrew Work at Arbor Times last night, who told me how this newspaper ordinance, where you have to apply for a license, you have to send copies to the authorities each time, came about out of the 60s and 70s and the unrest and some of the newspapers and communist propaganda that was becoming prolific around Hong Kong. So it's all emerged from this archaic policy and this colonial government wanting to stifle certain points of view. And we're now seeing the effects of it as technology has caught up and overtaken those times by years. So
it strikes me, Tom Grundy, you might actually be on stronger legal grounds actually challenging those archaic provisions about registration of newspapers and saying that those are a restriction on freedom of expression than who can go into government press conferences. But we'll see. Anyway, sorry, let's bring in CK Lau. CK Lau is now back with us, Associate Dean, Principal Lecturer at the Department of Journalism and Baptist University. Good morning, CK Lau.
Oh, good morning.
What do you make of this debate?
Well, I think I agree with what the other commentator says. I think basically here we have a situation of the government sort of failing to catch up with the times. Sort of change with the times. And I think they should begin to accredit proper online news media.
And how about the example of the Legislative Council? I mean, the other Legislative Council seems to manage to do this in Hong Kong.
I think the Legislative Council is a good point of reference, although I've heard people working on HKBU that I think the news journalism, the conventional, the traditional media sometimes, also have problems with, I think, the representatives sent by a certain online media. I think it's a matter of whether, I think there's still discussions still, the entry barrier for setting up online news media is very, very low these days, right? Anyone can do that, right? So my point is that I think government has to, change the times to introduce some criteria, objective criteria, to decide which online news media are genuinely news media.
That's the problem, though. I mean, you say objective criteria. It's just going to get into... I can see why the government doesn't want to do that. They're going to get into a minefield, aren't they, about that? I mean, with all kinds of accusations of political bias and so on. And
No. I think when I say objective, I mean this should be content neutral. But you don't want, say, an online news media set up by, say, CK Lau, right, who sort of writes about Let's Go once in a while to be given access simply because I say I'm operating a news website. Because whatever you do, right, I think there will be occasions when the venue is not big enough or whatever. You just can't allow an unlimited number of people who claim to be working as journalists to go into any function. Because wherever, the issue will eventually come up. I think there has to be reasonable. Freedom of reporting is an absolute right we have to protect. But then there will be occasions when appropriate time, place, manner restrictions are reasonable and have to be introduced. For example, White House press briefing. I agree with Francis that probably it was politically controlled or whatever. But you can't allow 500 people to get into a press conference. That would sort of make it impossible. So you have to find a way of, say, limiting the number 50. And that's the crux of the matter. What are the appropriate time, place, manner restrictions that could be introduced without infringing press freedom? I think that's the issue we have to look at.
What about, say, Passion Times? Would you allow someone from Passion Times, CK?
I think in joining the discussion, I think it's better that we don't look at specific members of the media, because otherwise
you don't want to answer,
right? I mean,
it is a minefield because, as they admit, they're kind of a news organisation, but they're also kind of a branch of a political party.
An advocacy group.
I would say that I think the media, to qualify, as a news media, genuine news media, you got to be routinely covering the news. Mm-hmm. I think that is the very basic requirement.
Well, that's what we do.
And you have a certain reach, I would say. You are not a fly-by-night operation. You are consistently doing it. You have people full-time devoted to it. Or, I like the JA, they have a rule about, say, if you derive certain amount of income from journalism activity, then you are considered a journalist. So you have to use those criteria. I think we shouldn't be using sort of political consideration as to whether this is pro-government or anti-government news media. We shouldn't use that sort of criteria.
That's interesting. So you should be a professional. You could measure it in terms of...
Yes.
Could I toss something else out here? The Human Rights Press Awards 20th anniversary is tonight. And in dealing over the last 20 years with hundreds of thousands of entries into the Human Rights Press Awards, we've had to track all the changes. In photography, we used to get slides. Film was processed and printed. Nobody's doing that anymore. It's all digital. We've had to change the rules again and again and again. How many pixels, how many this, how many that. Broadcasting has totally changed. Where's the lines? When something appears on the Internet first and then subsequently appears in an associated publication on a piece of paper, is it an online entry? Is it a newspaper entry? Is it a magazine entry? Where do these lines exist anymore? And what happens when they start appearing on multi-platforms? As I said before, the whole structure of the language that we use to describe our business is disintegrating and reforming in front of our eyes. It's going through some sort of mitosis, and we don't know how it's all going to fall out. So we're using language still valid in the recent past, but which is dissolving before our eyes, and trying to figure out how to make sense of it. Now, if the Human Rights Press Awards can do it, I submit that the government should be able, with some serious thought and with discussion and input from people, to come up with a way that may not be perfect, but can evolve.
Okay, there's lots of kind of bigger issues there about the role of online media and mainstream or traditional media, whatever you want to call it. Maybe we'd get to those a little bit after the news at 9 o'clock. Just some interesting points from Anthony I'd like to share in this part of the programme before Tom Grundy leaves. First of all, Anthony says, "Dear host, do you think the government should deny media who use physical violence at press conference, castigating and swearing at the hosts and the speakers?" Jerome, Chiu, do you want to maybe field that one?
Absolutely not. We don't do physical violence. Passion times.
So you would agree with our listener in that case that those who do physical violence, which is not, you say is not you, should be denied entry?
Of course.
Okay.
We have consensus on that one.
All right. Anthony says, I heard that during the good old days under the British administration, the Brits always have small group media briefing to selected media. Is that true, Moriarty? Asks.
Well,
Anthony.
I didn't get to invite to many small group things over the years, I can tell you.
Did you not?
I was not always flavor.
You were good friends with Chris Patton,
but I was not always flavor of the day, I can tell you. But the government would break things up into local journalists and overseas journalists to keep its message very clear and sometimes, in its view, not confused. And I know that there were individual briefings with certain reporters from certain papers who got their own favorite access, but I can say that I was not one of them.
All right. Anthony continues. Maybe this one is for you, Tom Grundy. Says, has anyone initiated judicial review against the British government for allowing selected media to their press events?
I'm sure that's a good idea. Francis, we're actually nominated for one of these awards tonight, so maybe the local government will accept our certificate if we win as entry. We'll see.
Tom Grundy, let's because you have to go in a few minutes. Let's ask a little bit more about your legal action. You said you've been granted legal aid, but you're still looking for other people to help you finance the action. I don't quite understand that. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I'm meeting with our legal team today, and the next step is to rally support, link up with other media and gather funds to take it
forward.
But
why? You say you've been granted legal aid, so surely they're going to be paying the funds, or?
No, they still want a large contribution from me.
Oh, okay, so it's conditional, right, on you coming up with the money or share the money yourself?
That's right, so it's still early days.
Yeah, and you know that these kind of legal actions can be very expensive indeed.
Oh yes, but there is a limit if you've been made an offer by legal aid, and also the very fact that they've made any offer suggests that they believe that this has merit.
Well, that is true. You've got to pass the basic threshold before they'll actually agree to fund
Exactly.
it. And you also realise that these kind of legal actions take years. I mean...
Oh yeah, well, we're in it for the long run, so...
You're in it for the long run, and is Hong Kong Free Press in it for the long run? Are you going to still be around by the time the end of this legal action?
Absolutely. I mean, people said we wouldn't be around by Christmas, we wouldn't be around, in a year, and we're still here and getting better, so...
You've certainly, you're quite right, you've outlived the expectations.
You're not making any money, are you? You're not making any money?
Hey, Judo, we're okay, I think. I mean, we've just launched monthly donations. Our balance is similar to as it was at the beginning of the year, about $500,000. And that keeps us safe for much of this year. But I think we'll always be reliant on public donations and support. The question is really how much do we want to diversify and experiment with other things, because the best way of retaining our press freedom is certainly public donations, a lot of people giving small amounts, because that completely dilutes, who we're answerable to. And at the moment, we are beholden only to ourselves and our readers, so we want to keep it that way. Okay,
and Anthony, maybe you did ask about the judicial review against the British government. I should point out that Tom Grundy was the man who actually tried to arrest Tony Blair, and literally went up to him and arrested him, so he's not actually frightened of the British government, I would say. Anyway, Tom Grundy, thank you very much. We'll continue the discussion in 3 minutes' time after the news. Before that, the weather, sunny periods and a few showers today, hot with temperatures up to about 32 degrees, the outlook hot with a few showers the next couple of days. 28 degrees at the moment with a relative humidity now of 85%.
Destroyed. It's about the future of Europe.
You're listening to the news on RTHK.
Well, welcome back. This is Backchat on a Friday morning. We're talking about online media, or new media, whatever you want to call it, how you handle that, and also if you get your news from new media, does that make any difference? Is there a significant difference between new media and what's called mainstream media, and also about the business models for online news? We have with us in Central Studio Jerome Chiu from Civic Passion, a writer at Passion Times, Francis Moriarty, a veteran journalist, formerly RTHK, and is a FCC Press Freedom Committee member, co-founder of the Human Rights Press Awards. Happy birthday to them, 20 years old today.
Thank you.
And also C.K. Lau, Associate Dean, the Principal Lecturer in the Department of Journalism at the Baptist University of Hong Kong, and a former journalist as well. Do chip in. Backchat@rthk.hk is our email address. Later we're going to be talking ahead of Mother's Day on Sunday about problems facing new mothers, in particular in the workplace in Hong Kong. Some interesting emails I'd like to share. One from Tom, first of all, who says, Dear Backchat, how contradictory are the Hong Kong government policies under CY Leung to encourage new startup IT businesses, particularly in the cyberspace on one hand, but to handicap all the new online media outlets with unfair regulations on the other? Hong Kong Free Press and other new online media outlets are clearly at odds with them, unlike the government traditional supporters like the major Hong Kong newspapers, CCTVB and the belated ATV. Good on the new online media outlets like Hong Kong Free Press for not giving in to simply sharing the propaganda from the government and CCP, as well as giving our society different perspectives and voices. Also, special thanks to RTHK in advance for upholding a reasonable guiding light in the beginning of these very dark days for press freedom and individual liberty. God help us, says Tom. Thanks very much indeed for those comments, Tom.
Jerome Chiu, just before the news, we had Tom Grundy from Hong Kong Free Press talking about the business model for Hong Kong Free Press. How about Passion Times? You seem to be pretty well financed. Where's the money coming from?
Not at all. We're on the brink of bankrupt every now and then.
We look at your website, it wouldn't give that impression. It's full of adverts, and clearly there's enough money to spend quite a bit on design.
Well, there are a whole lot of different reasons why we're on the brink of bankrupt. We have to generate income, and every year we have only two main opportunities of generating income. The Chinese New Year we stay there for four days in Victoria Park, selling souvenirs and so on.
I've seen you
and
there.
Then we go to the Hong Kong Book Fair in the summer, and these are the two main sources of income.
How about advertising? You've got plenty of ads on your website.
Not a lot of ads. We would have had more, but of course we don't charge people like the mainstream media do, and of course the thing is we because of reasons of principle, we don't take donations. So the source of income all come from the stuff we sell.
You don't take donations, so you're very different from Hong Kong Free Press there. You heard Tom Grundy saying, I mean, that's actually their principal source of income, and it seems like he expects that to continue. Whereas why do you not take donations?
Because there is one, we don't want to be, we want to be clearly seen as an organization that look after our finance in a more transparent way than is usually done by other political organizations.
Sorry, well, why does that mean you can't take donations? I mean, there's nothing to stop you taking donations and publishing the list of donors and so on.
No, we just don't take donations. We sell our stuff, and we always believe in getting what we're worth. So we sell stuff to people, we produce stuff, and if those who buy those stuff are those who support us through not only through money but through appreciation of what we offer. And of course we have individual program hosts in our station. They can be identified by members of audience and given money through us. So, but of course, the money goes straight to the program hosts. We take 30%, and they each of those hosts get 70%. It's clear.
I don't know how you feel about other media, and I haven't talked to you about other media. But do you accept? Because I think there may be people who don't really accept or understand that news gathering is an expensive business, and the person who's writing from their sitting room or whatever is essentially an amateur, and it takes money and it takes organisation, and there is a place for mainstream, for large organisations.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but of course, I mean, we talk about. When we talk about the differences between mainstream media and the current state of online media, we have to look into the pathology of the mainstream media. But of course, we're all familiar with that. But I'd like to talk about one thing that you just mentioned. In one sense, we're all amateur because we don't get paid professionally by writing or by reporting news and so on. But look at our product. We do believe that we're doing a job professionally.
I don't think, Hugh, that you can say that people who are sitting at home writing on the internet are necessarily amateurs. There are many that would be, but there are also people who have very considerable experience, expertise in certain areas, maybe long-time former journalists, people who may be semi-retired, people who decided they didn't want the rat race and wanted to do their own reports. There's a lot of information up on the internet from many, many credible sources, who are people who are just sitting in an office and producing material, but they've got good sources. They know how to use the media. They know how to use the telephone, which is still a useful tool for gaining information. And they can put up a lot of valid information. So that's another reason why it's complicated. But I do want to go back to we may have left a misimpression about something. It's not just a question of going to government news conferences. The government 24/7, every minute of the day, puts out information, some of which is very useful information. You read a traffic report a few minutes ago. A lot of people will find that useful. The government tells you when press conferences will happen. It gives you transcripts of things that were said, accurate transcripts of things that were said. It notifies you of things that are upcoming. It tells you if you want to attend an event and you need to a couple of days ahead of time, Zhang Dezhang is coming and you want to attend this, you've got a day and a half ahead of time, put in your information and let you know. There's zillions of things that the government puts out through its website, on your telephone. ISD, the Information Services Department, sends out huge amounts of information that lands on your cell phone.
The website's not a problem, Francis.
Well, the website you can access, but the point is, if you want to sign up for something, you're back in the problem that we're talking about, is whether you're accredited or not. But what I'm trying to say is, the government uses the media and the new media to put out enormous amounts of information. If you cannot get that because you don't have the accreditation, you are really cut off from news that can come to you. It's not just showing up the door and trying to get into an event.
Okay, let's bring in CK Lau. I guess what I'm saying, CK, is that you need the mainstream media, because you can't just say that you can't just have just citizen journalists and everybody kind of chipping in. It's a business that demands organisation, that demands money, and journalists, as we've been hearing recently, are paid a pittance as it is in Hong Kong, and have a very low status and all those kinds of problem. And if anything, or the prevalence of online media is making that worse.
Well, but online media have one advantage, is that the entry barrier is always much lower, right, than starting a conventional media organization. You don't need printing presses, you don't need distribution and all that. So actually the business model is changing. Of course, I think there's been a lot of attention to how the traditional media sort of evolves to adapt to the digital age. And I think overseas experience, I think the traditional media, for example, New York Times and Financial Times, they seem to be doing quite well after suffering for a certain period of having their circulation eroded by digital developments. But now it seems like that, for example, New York Times, you can see that it is launching different language editions, Spanish, Chinese, using the same English content. And
CK,
yes.
Where do the young journalists you're training at Baptist U, do they still want to go into print media, or do they think that online media is more exciting these days?
Well, I don't think they sort of make a distinction. I think basically they want a job that pays well.
They want a job, full stop,
yes. They want to be working with media, whether online or traditional, that are serious about, I think, reporting the news.
So is print still seen as more glamorous, or is it the reverse now?
It's hard to say. I think different young people have their own preferences. I mean, some people just like to appear on TV. Some more focused in print. I mean, some are, joining online media. I mean, you may be aware that at least in the Chinese language news market, I think two upstarts are doing quite well. One is the Nitium. The other is Hong Kong 01. Both of them are mainly online media, but they are doing serious journalistic work.
We've got other startups coming as well. We've got FactWire. FactWire raised incredible sum, didn't they?
Yes. I mean, I think a lot of people contributed to its setting up, and I wish them well. Yeah.
At Hong Kong 01, is that kind of a news organisation, or is it sort of an advocacy organisation? Because another problem is that a lot of the online news ones are like the Passion Times. They are for a cause. They champion a particular, cause, and they have something that they're trying to say in their organisation. They don't aspire to be objective. Whether, of course, they achieve that or not.
We aspire to be objective in our reporting.
You do.
But, of course, we say it up front that, of course, we disseminate our views through our programs and through our articles. But
there's nothing wrong with it.
Let's look at some of the great media barons of history and ask how objective and concerned they were. Let's look at William Randolph Hearst, and let's look at how...
Well, that's why I spoke of the aspiration, Francis. Let's not go down that because that's a long and whole other one.
Those were publications that had very clear points of view. Pro-labor, pro-working, anti-Chinese, whatever they may be, they were very clearly based on a particular point of view, and they built themselves off that. Okay. They didn't build themselves off objectivity.
All right, but there are organisations that speak of the need for objectivity and aspire to that, and that's part of their vocabulary and so on. If you talk about the BBC or something, or RTHK, the channel that you're on at the moment. CK Lau, tell us about HKO1.
Yes.
Do they kind of operate? Do they say that they are a news organisation like other news organisations?
Well, from what I can get, I read their online website from time to time. I also have read at least one issue of their print publication on the weekend. I think they are actually pretty similar to what you say, the traditional media. I think most of the reports that they publish are objective reporting, I would say. I mean, they do have certain views, but it's not obvious that they're trying to advocate certain political views.
And how about the business side, CK Lau? Because I mean, you're talking about your students want a job with a good salary, but the income on these websites is still very low. You heard Jerome Chiu just saying that they almost are all perpetually running out of money. Tom Grundy earlier on saying that he's effectively relying on public donations. You have to see how long that lasts. We still haven't seen a good business model, have we, for any of these online news agencies?
You know, students, I think, enroll in our programs for all sorts of reasons. Some are very keen to become journalists. Some are sort of, not too sure about what they want to do. You know, don't forget that when they enroll in our program, they're just teenagers, 17, 18 years old. I mean, they're not too sure about what they do. I mean, a small number are very keen to become journalists, and they would come out and try to enroll in media. And whether they will get a job, it's a two-way thing, right? It's not just a one-sided view of the journalist, yes.
All right, some more comments. Interesting. Thank you very much indeed. One, first of all, from Anorak, known as RJH. Okay, the speaker, I think this is addressed to you, Francis, when you said, I think it was you who said that everyone gets their news online. The speaker is pushing his own barrier by such a statement. He wishes it to be the case so he can succeed. For immediate news, RTHK/BBC World give update every half hour. Their coverage is thought through and vetted. A decent newspaper provides the same but in greater depth. Social media and online news feeds live from being immediate, which can beggar proper research. And the party interested in the news can choose when he accesses it and not have it fired at him through a device that is at best an interruption and most likely a distraction from living a life.
I think the comment was made by Tom Grundy, not by me.
Okay, all right, beg your pardon. Okay, and Anthony's back saying, interestingly, TVB, RTHK, South China Morning Post, The Standard are the top media in terms of credibility, while Apple Daily and Passion Times are in the bottom, according to a Chinese university survey. Well, Jerome Chiu, why don't you disclose your real Chinese name in Passion Times?
Well, this is my real English name. Why should I disclose both my names? And it's a choice that we choose. I mean, and Anthony is asking really strange questions. I mean, he's asking leading questions such as, do we conduct our investigation through physical violence and so on. Now, he's asking a kind of question that does not lead to any fruitful discussion. But I'd like to pick up on
those kind of questions don't deserve answers, and
I can disclose it if you like.
You
I can disclose certainly. I mean, Jerome Chiu is the name on my passport and on my identity card, and of course I can disclose my Chinese name if you demand.
There's a very famous lawyer in Hong Kong, a barrister named Alan Hu, who insists on being called Alan Hu, as I think the South China Morning Post is well aware. And if you ask him for his Chinese name, he will call you up and berate you, saying, "That is my name. That's my name on my passport. That's my name on my birth certificate." So I think you're in decent company there.
Okay, interesting discussion. We're getting possibly slightly off track here.
But I'd like to pick up on the view of on the immediacy of online media. And the level of professionalism of mainstream media. And we toiled for 2 years from 2012 to 2014, reaching just below 100,000 likes in our Facebook page. And during occupation, we broke through. We reached 100,000 and then 200,000 throughout the occupation, reaching 300,000 early last year, and we've just reached 400,000 likes in Facebook. And there is a reason why we got a great upsurge in viewers during the occupation. Is because people are looking for answers. People are looking for different views and different outlets. And during occupation, we provided videos and photographs and reports that were not available through mainstream media, and that's why people came to us.
You have 400,000 likes.
Yes.
Do you know how many Backchat has?
I don't know, but of course
it's about
we
1,600, I think. Yeah.
I don't know, but we can't compare
is
to
already pretty good.
Yes,
right?
we can't compare with the admirable 100 Most, which has got nearly 1 million likes now.
Right. Okay.
But what has happened? I mean, Occupy Central was a somewhat exceptional event, to put it mildly, and you had you did do a lot of coverage then. What has happened since Occupy Central? You haven't seen your numbers continue to climb in the same sort of way since then? They presumably plateaued.
Of course, is totally related to the gravity of the time during the occupation. And so we are picking up now. We get something like 100 more every day right now because of the upcoming election.
You really watch this closely, don't you? I mean, if Tom Grundy was here, still he'd probably say the same thing.
We reached 400,000 just the day before yesterday. So we when we were sort of closing in to 400,000, we watched it for a couple of days.
It's interesting. I mean, this is possibly for another day. We're moving even beyond the internet. I mean, you're watching your number of likes on Facebook, aren't you? Really, rather than the number of people looking at your webpage.
Just because we reached it just the day before.
And my plug. The 20th anniversary of the Human Rights Press Awards is tonight, and we will have a video statement from Fergal Keane of the BBC, who is speaking about press freedom. So those who are there tonight after 7 o'clock at the Maritime Museum will have a chance to see it then.
Have you got a Facebook page for that, Francis?
I think we do have a Facebook page. Our coordinator Joyce Lau was handling all of that sort of stuff, but I'm happy to let her do it. She gets it.
So Fergal Keane is in Hong Kong.
He's not. He couldn't come, but he sent us a video.
Okay.
Some comment just to wrap up from our Facebook page. We did ask how to handle new media. Yao Quan Q says, what do you mean by handle? The question is rather loaded. Steve says, everyone is a journalist these days. With an iPhone and a YouTube, I can reach the world. Henry says, I'm not sure how many people do matter over the timeliness of news in online media, say newspapers, whether printed or internet. Frankly, what's the difference? There's not a material difference to the layman. Reading printed or internet newspapers is already timely enough. The key thing is whether the reporting is of a high quality. And TC says, first, how should we define media? Does it have to sell newspapers, or does it have to broadcast through TV or radio like RTHK? Does it matter to have news from alternative sources? Not everyone has the financial resources to own or start a traditional media outlet. The internet is the only remaining medium where everyone's views can be expressed, says TC. Thank you very much indeed for those comments, and all those who are emailed and commented. One more from Anthony. What's he says? The conversion rates from quantity of likes to quality of likes. Jerome, says Anthony. You should come on the radio. You should pick up the phone, Anthony. Yeah, and you could sort of spoken to him directly. But we're out of time.
Clearly doesn't like us.
For the moment. Very many thanks to C.K. Lau, Associate Dean and Principal Lecturer in the Department of Journalism at the Baptist University, to Jerome Chiu from Civic Passion, a writer at Passion Times, and Francis Moriarty, a veteran journalist and also co-founder of the Hong Kong Human Rights Press Awards, as you mentioned earlier. Thank you all very much indeed. 23 minutes past 9, finally today and this week.